My name is Mr. Zod. See how I just walked into frame and sat down and that was a cool, dramatic, natural-looking thing to do? Minority Report is a 2002 film starring Tom Cruise. And today I just want to share some quick thoughts about it and how it shows us what can go wrong with prestige science fiction. It has all the signs of a movie that takes itself pretty seriously. It paints this dire picture of the future, it's almost prophetic in depicting targeted advertisement that we take for granted, and most of all, it shows us the consequences of trying to predict and prevent crime. Or does it? I don't think it does. Because as much as it feels like it's saying something meaningful about crime and punishment, it's really just this bundled bait and switch that ends up being almost totally meaningless. See, on its face, it has kind of a classic approach to science fiction. It shows us something that seems good and then gradually reveals that it's actually horrible, or that the consequences of it would be pretty horrible. The good thing in this case is the ability to predict murder. And who wouldn't want that, right? Everybody's safe because if somebody's about to kill you, the police can rush in and stop it before it can happen. And so, what goes wrong with this then? By looking at that, we can see how deeply this movie is actually interrogating this question. We eventually discover that there are three problems with this whole system. First, whenever the police catch someone about to do a murder, they put them into this weird state of suspended animation. And even though we don't know exactly what it's like, it's hinted at as being pretty horrific, maybe psychologically torturous. Second, the way they predict murders is by keeping psychics called precogs in this pool, where they're repeatedly traumatized by visions of future murders. And third, this process isn't always accurate. Sometimes the predictions will be wrong, in which case one of the precogs will have a different vision of the future called a minority report. Hey, that's the name of the movie! But here's the thing. None of these are consequences of predicting and preventing crime, right? Or at least not inherent consequences. Like take putting the pre-criminals into suspended animation. They didn't have to do this. If they found somebody about to commit a murder and stopped them, they could have detained them for a minute and then put an ankle monitor on them, issued a restraining order, maybe done some counseling, since crimes of passion are usually outliers committed by people under extreme stress, or maybe sticking them on some kind of registry. Not all of these options are equally good, but all of them are probably better than sticking a halo on somebody and keeping them in this weird torture coma or whatever. Or what about the cruel conditions the precogs were kept in? The people in the story had to do that, but the people who wrote the story did not have to. I didn't mean they had to, just that it was a necessary measure within universe if they wanted to predict crime. This was just an unnecessary addition. They could have had a crime predicted by a computer or something like that. So basically, since neither of these things are inherent to the idea of predicting and preventing crime, the movie is not addressing that issue in and of itself. It's just tacking on these other horrible things, and what does that explain to us? One is a mechanism that they could have made different within the story, and the other is just this completely arbitrary punishment that they used. What do either of those things have to do with predicting crime? The third one, which is that the system isn't always accurate, is an even bigger throwaway. Yeah, if a system doesn't work, you shouldn't use it. Again, what does that tell us about predicting crime and the consequences of that? This is a shame because there are a lot of interesting questions to be asked about whether having a pre-crime unit would be a good idea. And I mean, if you were able to predict crime without a lot of weird tacked-on side effects. If you just had a computer that could predict future crimes, would we want to use that, and what would it do to society? How much of an invasion of privacy would it be, and would it be worth it? What would you do with people who were about to commit a crime and got stopped before they could do it? What kind of punishment or rehabilitation would be appropriate for them? And as you explore that question, what might it tell us about punishment and rehabilitation for people who actually do commit crimes? And then how much would just stopping murder make society better? What about white-collar crime? What about the way society is structured? Is murder just the end result of a lot of other systemic social issues? And so, how much do we really achieve by just cutting off that one end result? Would there be a lot of ways for people to take advantage of a system like this, where only murder was prevented? There's a lot of huge, interesting social questions that could be asked here that could reflect on our society and explore a lot about a future society. But we didn't get that movie. Instead, we just got a movie that showed us a future society that could predict crime, but also showed that society doing things that were so obviously horrific that they weren't at all interesting to explore. We know those things are bad. What does that tell us about anything? And so, I don't know, it's kind of a bummer. It's this movie that looks interesting, has the appearance of having some good ideas. There are some good ideas in there somewhere, but at its core, its main idea is just kind of pointless, and I'm a little bummed by that. There was so much potential here that was just lost. All right, have a good day, everybody.